Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive structural clash that's unfolding right now across the globe. We're looking at whether the global race for artificial intelligence is actually elevating our humanity or if it's kind of systematically destroying it. And to do this, we really need to anchor ourselves to a core truth. Courage to face the truth is absolutely essential, because if you don't dare to face a problem, you literally have no chance of solving it. If we don't have the courage to look at the deeply flawed underlying math of our own creations, we're never going to be able to fix the issues they cause. So to truly understand our technological future, we have to face the harsh reality of this exact question. Does AI make us more or less dignified? Now, I know that sounds super philosophical, but trust me, it is intensely practical. Hiding from this question guarantees we lose control. The sources we're breaking down today pull data from neuroscience, sociology, and the European Union's current regulatory crisis to show that we are at a critical tipping point.
It's really a fascinating duality. On one hand, AI has this incredible potential to elevate our dignity, right? I mean, it can free us from dangerous repetitive labor, it can emancipate workers, and empower professionals like doctors to make way better diagnoses. But, as the research clearly shows, its default path, if we just leave it completely unchecked, often goes the exact opposite way. It leads to algorithmic oppression, black box decision-making where we have no idea why a choice was even made, and a really severe erosion of our free will.
Let's look at the global playing field to see how different geopolitical players are handling this tension. The US prioritizes a heavily market-driven approach, essentially treating individuals as data assets to maximize scale and commercialization. China takes a state-driven path, focusing much more on social control, collective efficiency, and prediction precision. And then there's the European Union. The EU has boldly attempted this human-centric model, aiming to legally mandate human dignity, privacy, and free will above absolutely everything else. Which brings us to Section 1, the illusion versus the harsh reality. Because listen, it sounds incredibly noble to legally mandate human dignity, doesn't it? But taking the moral high ground requires a massive reality check. The EU is quickly discovering that you cannot simply regulate your way to technological sovereignty. Just look at the sheer scale of the crisis. Out of the 2,900 global AI large language models currently identified, the EU holds a mere 30, just 30. The United States and China completely dominate the space. The EU tried to build a regulatory fortress to protect human dignity, but, well, they sort of forgot to build the actual technology first. And here is the immediate, devastating cost of that regulate-first approach. Instead of investing in rapid innovation, European companies are currently forced to burn a staggering 42% of their IT budgets purely on trying to prove their systems are compliant with these strict regulations. That is capital completely drained away from research, development, and actually competing on the global stage. When you add it all up, the resource deficit is honestly terrifying. 40% of AI startups are considering leaving Europe just to find environments where they can move faster. The funding gap is immense, too. We're talking about $8 billion in the EU compared to a massive $68 billion in the US. And to top the whole thing off, their Green Deal carbon targets mean that building the massive data centers required for AI is stalling out due to severe grid power delays. It's literally like the EU built a gorgeous sports car with the world's absolute best brakes, but absolutely no engine. So let's dive into Section 2, Math versus Human Dignity. You see, the EU's failure isn't just a financial issue or bad policy. It's a fundamental structural collision between moral idealism and cold, hard science. There's a physical and mathematical conflict between how AI works and how we define human dignity. Let's look at the neuroscience for a second. AI algorithms literally hijack our dopamine loops. Using variable reward schedules, think about how you endlessly scroll on social media, right? They're designed to maximize your engagement. Harvard research shows this systematically lowers activity in our prefrontal cortex. That's the part of the brain responsible for rational decision-making and self-control. So to achieve its commercial goals, the AI system is mathematically programmed to strip away our autonomous free will. Now let's move over to statistics and see how this builds. There's a known phenomenon called the accuracy-fairness tradeoff. As MIT's famous gender shades study proved, the very mathematical foundation of AI relies on data averaging. So to maximize an AI model's overall efficiency and accuracy, the algorithm naturally sacrifices the unique rights and nuances of minority or marginalized groups. It literally erases individual uniqueness just to get a better statistical average. And in the workplace, this mathematical ruthlessness manifests as what's called digital Taylorism. This is algorithmic management that strictly monitors every single second of a human's labor, calculating routes and delivery times down to the actual microsecond. Sociological studies show this drastically increases stress hormones like cortisol and completely destroys the worker's sense of value. Just take a look at this quote straight from the labor research. Workers feel objectified, not as humans working, but as biological parts pushing the algorithm. That is incredibly powerful. This devastating reality proves that the current default design of AI views humans not as dignified individuals, but simply as biological gears feeding a statistical machine. This takes us to Section 3, the pragmatic retreat, specifically looking at the Omnibus Act. Remember our core theme today? Courage. If you don't face these structural flaws, you cannot survive. And that is exactly why the EU was forced into a painful but absolutely necessary strategic retreat. Through the new Omnibus Act, they are courageously admitting their infrastructure just wasn't ready. They're delaying the compliance deadlines for high-risk AI systems to 2027. They're completely removing traditional industrial machinery from the immediate AI Act until 2028, just to avoid a double regulation nightmare that will crush their manufacturing sector. However, they are still holding the line on severe immediate abuses, implementing a total pioneering ban on deepfake nudifier apps by 2026. Now, human rights groups have definitely criticized this, but this isn't a total surrender of dignity. It's more of a dynamic compromise. It's a reality calibration to ensure European industries aren't totally suffocated while still keeping strict bans on those severe abuses we just mentioned. They're essentially trading pure moral idealism for actual technological and geopolitical survival. Because let's be real, if you completely crash your own economy, your high moral standards aren't going to influence anyone. And finally, Section 4, courage to find a third way. By admitting that defensive regulation alone cannot foster innovation, the EU has finally found the courage to search for a genuine technical solution. They realize they can't just legislate their way out, they actually have to engineer their way out. They're pivoting to what we can call a third way. They're actively funding the creation of synthetic data. That's AI-generated data that doesn't violate human privacy limits, but can still train models effectively. They're heavily subsidizing explainable AI, or XAI, trying to break open the black box so humans know exactly why an AI made a specific choice. And they're even making legal exceptions to allow limited use of sensitive data, specifically to detect and fix algorithmic bias. Basically, they're trying to build technology that naturally aligns with human rights from the ground up, rather than just slapping rules on top of it after the fact. Which brings us to the ultimate question we all need to be asking right now. How can we redefine human value in the AI age so it isn't simply reduced to statistical data points? I want to leave you with this final thought for today. Unless we have the unshakable courage to acknowledge that AI's underlying math is currently at war with our dignity, we will never be able to build the technology needed to protect our free will. You have to face the problem to solve it. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it gave you an incredible new perspective on the intersection of humanity and technology.